We are live. We are recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the East Hampton Town Trustees, November 25th, 2024. I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Marlene, can you do a roll call, please?
John Aldridge.
Here.
Francis Bach.
Here.
David Cataletto. Patrice Dalton.
Here.
Ben Dollinger.
Here.
Jim Garneau.
Here.
Jim Grimes is here, just away from the desk. Celia Josephson.
Here.
And Bill Taylor.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Matt, do we have anybody on the phone lines?
You have 0 callers on the line. Thank you.
Okay, and at the moment, I don't see anyone in the audience, but we may have a visitor. Move on to new business. Georgia dredging bid package. Is that Jim, or is that someone else covering that? All right, let's go to the proposed Suffolk County resolution, number 1917-2024, a local law to amend Chapter 25 of the of the Suffolk County Code to permit conservation of working waterfronts. Legislature Ann Welker has requested board support. John, I think you drafted.
Yeah, I read up on this and spoke to Ann. She wants our support. I drafted a letter for Francis to send if we agree. And basically what it does is it amends the Suffolk County Code, the chapter on conservation easements, to include working waterfronts, properties that are considered working waterfronts. So a property owner who wants to put the property into a working waterfront, conservation easement can apply to the county. And if they approve it, they would be under this designation. It goes anywhere from 5 years to in perpetuity. And there's an existing code section that deals with conservation easements, but they wanted to add this one for working waterfronts in order to.
It's a new category. Should they get a tax advantage from that, right?
I think they do. I asked Ann that question. She wasn't sure. She was looking into it. She didn't get an answer yet, but I'm sure there must be some advantage for the property owner. It's not just a gratis kind of a thing. So I think there's an immediate benefit to this in the town in that some of this legislation is oriented towards some property in Montauk that might be used for an ice facility. There was concern that since Gosman's has been sold, that it's the only ice facility in the lake. So I think there's a property somewhere else that will take advantage of this working waterfronts easement and I believe create an ice facility on it. So I'll make a motion that we send a letter of support.
Yeah, because this has to go out like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay,
All right, so you sign it now, please.
we'll get it out tomorrow. Okay, go back to public comment. Susan, did you want to address the board? Come up to and introduce yourself, please.
You said on the agenda that there was an updated.
No, Susan, go ahead. Go ahead. You got the floor.
Susan. Introduce yourself, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Julia. Hi, kids. They're watching. I have 3 little grandchildren, and they're going to be excited about this, I'm sure. I'm here because of the very surprise announcement of the dredging in front of my house at Lazy Point.
Can you,
I live
I'm sorry, can you just state your name? For the
so I'm Susan Noble.
Okay.
I live at 100 Shore Road, which is the second house from the launching ramp, right on the parking lot right there. I bought my house just about 50 years ago, and I've taken good care of it all this time. I've taken very good care of the property, as you all have been told many times. I don't use any chemicals or take care of the animals there. I just, I think I don't hurt anything down there at all. Very peaceful life down there. Over the years since I've had my house, and I know I addressed this in my letters to you all, but in the years that I've had my house, I had about 125, 150 feet of beach, a dune, beach grass in front of my house. And several years ago, when it was determined that that channel should be opened in front of my house, it was just a little stream going through. As a matter of fact, Tom and I would row the boat through there because we couldn't really go with the motor down. It was so small. And the other channel was open. And that was good to have that other channel open. But they opened the channel and changed the angle of the launching ramp and immediately started an erosion process right in front of my home. And it has increased and increased and increased. And I've been very nervous about it all these years. You, the board, the trustees have been very kind to me in this whole process through the years, and I do appreciate it, the concern that you've had for me. But it was a little bit upsetting to hear that it's been 10 years now. The last 10 years ago, they changed the channel. They had a plan to cut the island off 50 feet, Hicks Island, which is right across from me, and dredge the channel differently. They actually cut out big stone from the bottom out in the bay and through the channel. The big old slabs that have always been there, they cut through that, and in the process of doing it, they broke their dredge. It was a very long and intense process. So that has left. The end of the island is gone. And I see that there are certain changes to the area because it's a whole different plan that they've initiated there. And the whole beach has changed. Some of it has gotten wider. In the bend, it's a little bit wider. There's now beach grass to the west of me, which I had something to do with planting it. It didn't hold in front of my house because the tide was coming in too far. But the beach has changed, and what's changed for me is the water from the tidal flow. The water is a little bit farther away from me, which is a good thing, but because the end of the island was cut off, I get belted with every storm we have, front on. And I don't have enough property in front of my deck there's nothing there to hold it back. I mean, my sandbags and stuff, but I have to keep replacing those. And so that was a change, but it was the storms now bring the water in. If you go down there and walk along the beach at low tide, there's a nice little strip of beach in the front. Not wide, but there's still beach. But when the tide comes in, if we have a full moon or if we have a storm, it really comes in. Another thing that's changed is that there is a swamp in front of the D'Amico house, which is substantial. It was small before, but it's big now. And the property just east of that, it's between D'Amico's house and Susan's house. There's a big swamp there, which just fills with mosquitoes all the time. That swamp began filling up because when they moored the transport barge in the bend, when they did the last dredging 10 years ago, they moored it there and they used a bulldozer to ferry men back and forth along the beach to the barge. And in doing so, they dug deep ruts going right in there, and if you go down and look, you'll see the kelp or the eelgrass on the beach. It dips right in there because when we have a high tide, the water now goes rushing in there and fills it up. And at the time, 10 years ago, I saw what they were doing and how deep it was, and I asked the dredge people, I said, well, what are you going to do about this? Look what you're doing to the beach. You're going to cause a big problem. They said, don't worry. We're going to take a big load of sand. We're going to fill it in. When we're done, nothing will happen. They didn't do that. They left without filling anything in. I understand that it's easier for them to ferry people back and forth with their bulldozer, backhoe, or whatever, but they're cutting up that very fragile part of the bend, which I've been concerned about that. But that beach there is a little wider. It's just that now it goes in at high tide. So I'm concerned about that, but I'm concerned about my home. It's so close now, and it looks like I have more sand down at low tide, but at high tide, it's just right there. And so I presumed that we were moving forward with having approvals for the East Channel. And I read the studies from the Peconic Estuary people, which they recommended that the East Channel be opened. And they said it would be better for the life of the harbor as well. I mean, it's a great harbor, but they said that it would be better. And I thought we were moving in that direction. I called the Peconic Estuary people, and they haven't gotten back to me, but I don't think that there has been a study in the town or with Peconic Estuary or by the county of the effects of the last dredging and the changing of the channel the way they did. I don't think they've looked at it, because if they had looked at it, they would see what's happened to the salt marshes down there and how close the water now rushes in so fast where it didn't before. There's such a pull going in and out of there. People in the summer, I mean, Julia and the children were there all summer. It's great fun because they go out to the point, jump in with their boogie board, and they're right down at the launching ramp immediately. It just goes so fast. It's boats, a huge amount of wake, boats zinging in and out really fast. Get jet skis going fast, making wake, a lot of waves coming in. They just go fast because the channel is so deep and so wide. And it just baffles me how, with the channel being so open and moving so fast and doing what it's doing, that they would not know this, that they wouldn't see this or understand this, and that they would go ahead with the dredging. I know that it's a done deal. I'm sure that it is a done deal, what's going to happen. But I am just putting my feelings out there that it is unnecessary at this point. And it's not only unnecessary, but it could be catastrophic to the area where I live and to the marshes and the other areas. And I hope that if it can't be, I know we have to be on good terms with everybody. If we can't do anything about it, I hope that there will be some other solutions that might be helpful. And I just want people to, I want there to be a study. I want people to think about it and I'm very irked that we didn't have any. We've always had meetings. You know that. We've always done a lot of discussion about this. There was nothing.
Hey, Susan.
We were all blindsided.
We were
You too.
blindsided with this. Kim Shaw, the town, was blindsided about this. We literally got the notice on this when the county contacted the town and contacted our office to get any of the kayaks and stuff off the beach. That's how we found out about this. Okay, so-
That's not really acceptable, I don't think,
But there's not, but you know what? It isn't. I grant
But it's done.
it's not acceptable, but I don't see any immediate solution to mitigate that. Okay.
Well-
Moving forward, we're all gonna have to be more diligent on these things. But you know what happens is, 10 years ago, they did the dredging there. That was before, the only person that's on this board from 10 years ago is Bill.
yeah, and he was
Okay.
right there.
Yeah.
I
all
remember
right.
you watching
So,
over it.
you know,
You were
the
like a
10
hawk.
years goes fast. The county apparently saw that the DEC permit was getting ready to run out. They renewed the permit. There was no notification to anybody. And to tell you, we are moving forward on the East Channel. That's something that we are moving forward. Unfortunately, it's not going to give us anything here. What happens with something like the county, the contract was drawn up, it was awarded, and because we asked them to please not dredge it, but what happens there is the contractor in turn finds themselves forced to sue the county for the full value of the contract. So at the end of the day, if the dredging doesn't get done, the county is out the full cost of that dredging because they basically cheated the contractor out of the contract.
I just wish
So-
they didn't have to cut more off the end of the island, because I'm gonna get hit even harder. And I wish that, I mean, I'm very, I've talked about for years having the other channel open. That would be a good answer for a lot of things. I think it would be good for the life of the harbor and the winter flounder and, everything there in the harbor. The harbor's really good. It's one of the only harbors in this town that isn't armored. I mean, the inlets.
Yeah.
It's just open to everything. And so, but I feel like maybe to pursue the opening of the other channel, and then this one will have to be closed.
Well, no, what the hope is, because, the long-term goals here, certainly the primary goal is going to be the health of Napeague Harbor. But there's collateral benefits that we're looking to get there, one of which is Hicks Island. Used to be, when you were living there was a great lease turn, piping plovers, gulls that bred there successfully year after year. Well, it was at the time that you talked about. There was that little dream between your house and Hicks Island. It was enough of an impediment for things like feral cats and raccoons
Yes.
that they didn't cross it.
Yes.
Well, now Hicks Island's a peninsula, okay? Everything comes over from the Goff Point side. There hasn't been nesting birds in there for ages because there's no point. Everything gets eaten. So that's one of the benefits, one of the many benefits. The sand that comes out of there hopefully does not get used. Well, some of it would certainly need to get used to narrow up that west inlet because you can't have two inlets equal size. That would have to be reduced to what it was many years ago. You would pick up, hopefully that would be built back from your house towards Hicks Island. And all of the sand hopefully could be pumped down to the properties way west, Bayview and those sand-starved areas there. So there's been a lot of thought put into what we want to do there. But it's like everything else. You've got to go step by step, and those steps seem to take forever.
The last 10 years ago, the dredge people actually came to my house and told me that they were sorry for what they were doing to me. which was, he's amazing to me. But the guy said, I want to tell you that there's a place in North Carolina that had a similar situation to right here, the bend, where the bend is, it goes out to the point. He said there was a situation like that that was having terrible erosion from the dredging. And he said they found a solution to build the sand up in that bend. The bend right now has built up a little bit, but not in front of my house. It dips in front of my house. But what he said was they came down, not them, but the town came down and they put these very small, he said they used a pipe, they drove a pipe in at high tide, at the high tide mark on the beach, and put a series, it would be like, I'm trying to think, it would be like a gill net, but it was more solid. It was like, it would be like, you know, the little seine nets that you do with kids. So the crabs aren't caught and the fish aren't caught and everything. It has a lead line, it has floats along the top, and they set a bunch of those close together in the bend in that area, and he said it caught the sand and it built it up. And they are something that could be put in only in the winter, in the cold months, so that it doesn't interfere with any moorings. And the offshore piece is like, it would explain, is like a mooring. And it would just have this thing dropped into the water, and they would be monitored to make sure it wasn't hurting anything, but it would have a chance to catch the sand that goes through and build it up. And I thought, you know, we haven't tried anything like that. Maybe that's something
That's something to look at.
something to think about or find out about. Maybe that's a way to build the beach up a little bit there.
Like an underwater snow fence.
Yeah, kind of like that, an underwater snow fence. But he said that what they used was the black landscape cloth. He said that's what they used on those, but that's plastic, I think. We wouldn't want to use anything like that in the harbor, but like netting, very, very fine netting to catch and it would flow with the tide and everything, and they could be staggered along there, just a few, to see if it worked, and take them out in the spring before the moorings go in again. I think it's worth seeing if we could build the beach up a little bit that way, because it's not going to get built up any other way. And there's probably a lot of other suggestions that we haven't thought of. You know, it's just maybe being very creative and asking around and checking to see how it's done. But maybe that would hold long enough than to have the other channel dredged. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
That's a short-term hope. But anyway, okay, thank you for letting me speak.
Susan, good to see you.
It's good to see you, Susan.
I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you. It's not an easy job to take care of this town. I'm glad it has good people doing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will there be a lot more discussion on this? Or is it pretty much over? Did I do it?
You didn't do anything wrong.
No.
Well, I don't think there'll be much more discussion on whether the dredging will happen. We already had the conversation with the county, and it was pretty much fruitless.
Well,
So we're directing more effort into getting the other channel open and getting the one in front of you.
Ann Welker called me.
Closed.
Yeah, she called me today. Well,
Yeah.
she called me tonight. Said she'd had a very nice conversation with a couple of the trustees, and I think she's wonderful.
Yeah, she's great.
She thinks you're wonderful. So, and I think that she would like to be helpful in some way, but a lot of it is just out of her hands.
And if we can figure out a way to bolster the beach in front of you, we will.
That will be awesome. There must be some other way that we haven't thought of. I've thought of a lot of ways, you know, but
There's some creative
They're not
minds at the
allowed.
table.
Yeah.
a lot of the rocks that I was allowed to put in years and years and years ago, which they don't allow anymore, a lot of them have washed out now. They're practically non-existent.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry you have to go through this.
Yeah.
I am too. I went to Stony Brook Hospital this week a couple of times because I'm a part of a grand 200-person study on stress. And he said, "Do you have any stress?" Okay, yes, I have a little bit. Well, the doctor's going to study your face in the camera and see how you react to stress, so.
If they only knew.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Susan.
telling us.
God bless you all.
All right. Matt, is there anybody on the phones?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go back to the Georgica dredge bid package. I think that's you.
Yeah, I didn't, Arlene sent me that, you sent me, was it Allison? Yeah, yeah, I mean, we're getting ready to put the package out for the, bid package out for the dredging. That should go in this week, so if we can make a motion to do that, we'd like to get that on schedule for January, February.
I'll make a motion, we put the bid package out for the
Second.
Georgia dredging.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
While we're on the subject of Georgia Pond, I know I said I wouldn't open it again, but I did open it again because we had good weather conditions to do it. We never got any real water exchange over there because it literally was not open 24 hours the last time. As of today, it was flowing quite nicely.
Great.
So we'll see how long it stays open. If it stays open, it will be closed when they do the dredging work. And then it'll be left open. I hope it does not stay open quite as long as it did this year, because that thing didn't close until, oh God, it was middle of July. So,
All right. Committee reports, Acabana Creek, Louse Point dredge plan.
It's me. Kind of similar to what we just heard. So we have, I'm just going to say what I researched. I spoke with a lot of people about their input to getting the dredge authorized. Officer Treadwell, the commercial fisherman, Kim. And it seems like the only conversation with the DEC and the county directly is through Kim. So my first, attempt was to say, has anyone at the DEC seen the sediments analysis? Kim doesn't know. I don't think she'd ever seen it before, so I don't actually know how they would have gotten this. But where I'm going with this is strategic planning for what kind of information would the regulators need from us in order to implement what we would like them to do, or authorize what we would like them to do.
I
So if
think,
we had,
just to clarify, I think you're talking about dredging down to the launching ramp at Louse Point.
that's what the beginning of it, right? So that's where my immediate conversation was about, take these data, and would they persuade anyone to do that? And Kim and I reviewed it, and we found that these are, what Dr. Gobler produces with his graduate student are data. And there's no recommendations, so to speak, of in this all of this body of work, which we have plenty of it. And I was trying to figure out what would convince them to dredge down to the launch ramp. We looked at this data. We don't have the data that talks about where they do dredge in the channel. We don't have that. These measurements are where we want them to be. So if we want to say this is like
what's dredged where they do dredge. We're missing that one piece.
Has to be beach compatible sand.
Yeah, we don't.
It's a simple,
And that's the size.
Pardon?
That's the size of the granule.
No, I know, but we did, in our data set here, we only have where it's not dredged. We don't have where they dredge.
But, I mean, what we want them to do is, they should either dredge it to the channel or give us a specific reason why
Right.
this sand is not beach compatible. You know,
Right, so we know what we have here. We know we have all these measurements about granular size and what it is. But what do we do with that? I mean, how do we say this is, let's say we pick 3 embayments and say, this is what the trustees would like to see. We've looked at all these data and this is what we would like to see. So and it's going to be mostly dredging because that's really the only thing it's easy for us to make recommendations about, like nitrogen septic systems and that kind of thing. It's really not within our remit. But if we talked about dredging, put together, say we would like this to be dredged between here and there, and this is why we recommend it. Sit with the regulators, who are probably the DEC, say, what would you like to see? What kind of data would compel you to look at this? Because right now we have this data and no one's looking at it. And, well, we are, but I mean, they're not looking at it. We could do that for the Northwest Creek, and we could do it for Napede. Pick those 3 embayments and work with the DEC on what they would like to see.
Is there a silt factor in that? In his report, in Dr. Goldber's report?
Right?
Is there silt involved?
Yes.
Is it substantial?
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem.
yeah, they're not gonna give you permits to
They're
dredge.
not going to pump it on the beach.
No,
So
but you could use where the silt is and where the silt isn't to justify dredging in a certain area, not another area. I'm not sure there's enough points of data to steer it just right, but
Right.
there
is
are.
there more data we need to gather?
I don't know. I mean, I think,
See, my understanding,
Treese is right in a way that, if we sort of have to tell people what we want to do and show them the data we have and say, is it enough? What do you need?
What do you need?
my understanding is that they did some, they looked at that area.
Yeah.
And the silt was the issue. And that's what is preventing them from doing the dredging there.
Yeah, so what I found out was they hire a company to take soundings. So that was the data I was looking for, and I haven't received it yet. I mean, it's sort of a mystery, like what would that data look like? I'd like to see it. But we picked a line, and Kim was in complete agreement with pick this line from where they dredge to the launch ramp, and that's where we could concentrate on our measurements. And also surfacing this is, exposing this data in a way that people can understand it, like not a layperson necessarily, but you could sit with an executive and say that, this is what I have, and this is, but right now it's kind of more for a technical person.
We had to do a similar thing to get the dredging permit for Georgia Pond.
Right.
We're going to have to talk to Suffolk County to have a dredge screening committee in the legislature.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have to get them on board, and then you have to get the DEC to give you the permit. I know we were all up there to open up Georgia Pond. We finally wound up with a huge meeting with, it appeared to be most of the DEC, and we finally got them to change their
I
thing.
think that's the way to go, is because when Kim tells me she speaks to the DEC, I'm like, well, who do you speak to? But, because DEC is a big organization, and
It's not that big.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
but we had
So,
Francis and,
but it's question of, you know, in other industries, this is what's done. When you have a regulator, you meet
You know,
with
when you
them.
went to one of those meetings, Patrice, I think what's going to be important is to have the information that you're talking about, but you have to have specific goals that you're trying to get into, because when you walk in, if you go, well, we're thinking of doing this, and then if that doesn't work, we're thinking of doing that, it ends the conversation.
Yeah.
So-
They literally escort you to the door, because you know what it is? They can only react
Who
to
does?
the
Who does?
DC.
they're,
They're
I
people,
mean, but first of all, the Ds, I mean, the permit would go to the county.
Yeah.
So it's the
Permit would go
county,
to the
the
county.
county goes to the
but would
Ds.
would actually have to get support from the county on this first.
The county, that permit was recently renewed
Right.
What permit?
for Loud's Point. So that means that they're gonna be looking for a modification. And for the modification, it has to go before the dredge review board. We have to make a case to be able to do that. So would it make sense for us to take that data, hand it over to an engineer, and have them translate it to what we would need?
Yes.
there's another point we have to
Well,
make with the
yeah,
dredge screening committee
I'm
is
not sure
that,
that's
And
a
then be
first. I'm not
prepared- and
sure
then
if
be
that's a first
prepared to
step.
go to
I'm not
the,
sure if that's,
but the purpose
You
of
might wanna go to
dredging
the
is to
county and
provide
say,
access to
is this,
people in
is this,
the
what do
county
you,
to the
you know,
water.
here's the data we have. This is what we want to
If you're
do.
not
Here's the
connected to
data we
the
have.
Launching ramp,
Is this good enough?
the dredging.
Do you want us to go to an engineer and give us,
Look,
and
Jim and I met with
generate
the
something
county.
else?
I'm pretty
Last week
sure
or 2 weeks
after
ago.
meeting with the county last week,
They don't budge.
Well,
you know
but,
what it is? The creatures of habit.
yeah, but
Is the
now-
only,
but you've got this
Just bureaucrats. They're
problem
nothing
in
more than that.
Napeag now,
Yeah.
and it's on everybody's radar now.
yeah.
And including Ann's radar. So now you've got an ally, you may have an ally in a
We do.
legislator, in your legislator. And, you know, if you have your town natural resource department, the trustees and the county legislator, all on, and a bunch of residents all on the same page.
I think that's important because we also have Ed Romaine. He's a possible person to
Well,
support
that's where
us.
I'm going to be honest, that's where we're headed with Napeag. But you know what it is? You got to understand, before, when you go into that meeting, okay, you've got to know what you're looking for, and you've got to be able to back those desires up with some credible information. Because you know what Francis, I think, started to say was when we met with the county guys, here's the deal. They dredged Accabonac how many years ago? Wasn't
10, roughly 10.
No, less than
Less
that.
was less than
My
10 years
understanding
ago.
is it's up for the next round of dredging.
Yeah, but
Next-
here's the
next year,
thing.
at
When
this
they
time.
dredged it however many years
Yeah.
ago, that's how they did it. And you know what? They're very much creatures of habit
Mhm.
in that what they did the last time is what they're looking to do the next time. And what happened with us at Napeag, quite frankly, is we're too late in the game, okay? The permits were procured, the contract was awarded, and whatever you're talking about is not for now. It's for later, and you've got to carry that thought. So before you go walking in to a meeting with the county, you're going to have, like, I think we need to have our act together and know precisely what we want. And I think Francis is right, John. I think having some language that's prepared by an engineer who knows what the key talking points are is important,
It is.
you know, because it's like going to France and not speaking French, man.
So we have a lot of data here. If we could present it in the correct way to persuade someone. And I think that we have 3 embayments that our position on should be really clear. This is what we want. And, you know, if this isn't the data, then what do you want? And are we asking for something reasonable or not? But having those conversations is going to be really helpful.
So if this thing is on the schedule for next season,
Right.
we need to start on this immediately
Yes.
in order to get them to do the modification on the permit.
Yeah, I heard
Because
the permit.
that's their main excuse for everything they don't want to do, is it's not included in the permit.
I haven't, Kim said the permit, she heard it was approved, Yeah, but she didn't know exactly what was in it.
Well,
So this is a
there's a
good
couple
time.
things that you're dealing with. If the permit's approved, okay, has a bid package been put out there? Has there been a successful vetting process on it? If the bids are awarded, well, then it's too late. But if the bidding hasn't been done yet, well, perhaps there's time to recalibrate, go back to get a modification in place, and do exactly what you're
Even if it
trying
puts
to
the
do.
project off 1 year.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing if we get a good process here and we communicate with the right people.
And it's better value. It's better value for the county. It's better value for this community.
Yeah, I think we should emphasize the point that, I mean, what's the sense of having a channel if you can't utilize the launching ramp? I mean, they won't let you dredge unless you can show a public purpose for the
Right.
dredging.
They
And the public-
think their mission is to keep the channel open, the navigation channel open.
But to go where?
Well, go into the harbor generally.
To the harbor, yeah. Because people are using the harbor more for like kayaks and
Yeah.
small non-motorized craft. And then the commercial fishermen are coming out and the channel is 10 feet wide.
Oh, yeah.
And people on kayaks don't know that the commercial guys can't turn on a dime, and it's really a little challenging sometimes, according to them. So I think that they would support us as a business need for that if we have kayaks.
Well, listen, you know what? There's a couple ways you can approach this, okay? If the permit modifications are the impediment, okay, so you can work to get the permits modified to accept going to the launching ramp. If it's budget driven, if the county's looking at this and saying, hey, yeah, we're planning on doing this, but we don't have a line item to expand this work beyond what we've done the last 2 or 3 times. Well, there might be an opportunity where the trustees and the town or the trustees make the offer of, okay, what is your additional cost here? And if we underwrite either all or part of that cost, well, basically at that point, you've removed the impediments.
Yeah.
So, listen, I support you in trying to get to that point. And if there's anything we can all do to help, let's go ahead and do it.
So how do we move this along? Do we want to make a statement that we have strategic objectives around dredging and?
Well, I think it's right now, I don't think you can take and paint broad stroke policy. I think this is a harbor by harbor issue.
Right.
That culminates in sort of a general policy. But right now you have Louse Point that's going to be up for dredging. It's imminent. Let's focus on that. Napeague Harbor, it's too late. West Channel's getting dredged again, but you know what? We can be working towards that ultimate goal of opening up the East Channel and, one, getting that permitted, B, getting it funded, and the last thing is implementation.
The only thought I have here about Napeague, though, is that they're at the end of their 10-year permit, so they're going to be applying for the next 10-year permit, we don't
They
necessarily.
just got it. They
They
just
just
got
got
the
it.
permit.
They're gonna be applying for it in about 8.5 years.
They had sent us paperwork to sign off
At the end of it.
for the permit.
No, they just renewed that permit. That's what's tough. That was the killer about saying, hey, listen, let's get a modification on the permit. No, we just got the permit.
They got
We
the
just
permit
put
and
this-
immediately went to dredge.
Well, but then, I mean, I think we should, have a dialogue with them, with Pete too, and say, I mean, I don't think it needed to
Hey,
be
John, we
dredged.
already are having the dialogue with them at Napeag.
But about what, how they're gonna behave going forward, and how we're gonna be included in whether we want it or
We were
not.
pretty clear about that.
We were pretty clear. I mean, the ball's in our court, one, to hire an engineer, hire somebody to put a package together and a plan and provide whatever data sets we need to fill in the blanks, okay? And then this is not going to be a project, John, that the county does.
Well,
It's going to be,
you're talking about the East Inlet.
I'm
now.
talking about the East End.
I was just
Right, he's
talking about
the-
their continued maintenance dredging of the West Inlet. Because if nobody says anything,
We said it.
they're gonna
We
go.
said a lot.
But what they've been doing lately is bypassing us completely and going directly to Kim.
And it's sometimes
Well,
they don't even go to
I
Kim.
mean, well, I've been on the board, we've generally gotten, or Kim's gotten a request for our priorities, and she's come to us, and then we've told her, and
Right,
they
and she
told them.
passes it on.
But
But
the county seems to sort of go on its own after
does,
that,
yeah.
to a degree.
at no
sometimes.
time did we recommend doing Napeag's West Channel.
Yeah, I think the communication channel is very complicated.
Well, and truthfully.
But that's what I'm talking about. We have to sort of have some kind of an understanding with them that,
Right.
our desires are
Hey,
going to be
hey,
sort of
John.
paramount.
Hey, John, we sat down with them on a Zoom call the other day, and what became painfully clear is the few guys that were sitting on the call was, we've been here X number of years, and we do it this way, and this is the way we do it.
These two guys were the underlings who are now in charge. Because the guy who was in charge, and I don't want to use names, has retired.
There's been management changes.
Yeah,
So-
and the guys,
All the more reason to have,
yeah,
And
we're
ongoing
working on that, John.
And I think it would be good to have,
To shut up.
No, it's, everything you're saying is totally correct.
We
And we've been-
agree with you.
Yeah.
And we are addressing that.
When, when we did the dredging, when we started the dredging at Georgica, to dredge Georgica, that was years we were fighting. We
Almost
wound
3
up-
years. It took us
we wound up
roughly
all up there in a huge
almost-
meeting. And
almost 3 years to get that back on track. Because what we faced at Georgia is for years, and this was a policy that this board had for many years, is what we would do is we didn't want to recognize the DEC because we predated the DEC. It's not really, it's a little hard to follow the logic here. We predated the DEC, ergo, we don't need to talk to the DEC, except the problem you run into is any contractor you hire is not going to go down and dredge something without permits because they can be fined, they can be locked out of other DEC permits. So what would happen for many years is we would live vicariously through natural resources.
Yeah.
They would procure the dredge permits for us, they would renew it. Okay, well, that went on for a good number of years. The last year they did it was shortly before, the last year they dredged was shortly before Larry Penny retired. Kim Shaw inherited a few thousand yards of sand piled up on the beach, a violation issued by the DEC and a fine of $20-some thousand. And I'm not sure, I think the Georgia Association got the same fine because it was on their property. Okay. So post that, Kim was a little reluctant to help the trustees in any way, shape, or form. So it wasn't until this board, Francis, Bill, and I were on here, that we actually went and did the permits with the town. Okay, but this is where it went off the rails immediately. Kim subbed it out to GEI. GEI really wasn't necessarily paying attention to the history. The first thing the DEC said was, well, you guys have been doing this seasonal letting, which we're not wild about. We want that seasonal letting to be a permitted
They wanted to roll it into that
wanted to
permit.
be a permitted activity, and they wanted to roll it into the 10-year maintenance permit. Well, this is where we became the previous board and said, no, historically, we've done this twice a year. We're not going to include that in any permit. We've done it. We're going to continue to do it. The three of us literally spent, it was about 6 hours we spent with the DEC, where they basically, they never agreed with us. They just finally got tired of listening to us and agreed to take the seasonal letting out of our 10-year maintenance permit.
It was a long meeting.
That was always the Stuart Vorpal approach to the DEC.
Well, listen, I got to tell you,
And they just
We
ignored
were
it.
honest.
Francis just
honest.
wouldn't give in at all, not an inch. And finally, the woman that was the sort of director out here, I don't know what her title was. Her subordinates were adamant, no, we want it included. She finally said, listen, screw it. Let them friggin' open the pond a couple times a year. What the hell do we care? And that was sort of the end of it.
Well, they can't argue with 300 years of history.
Well, the argument to 300 years of
Do
history
you want to go to
was,
court with that?
you're hanging your hat on the Donegan patent and the Nichols patents. There was a revolution fought to get England out of here. Well, the fact is, both patents are part of the New York State Constitution, and without them, there would have been no conveyance of ownership to this new country. It would have been a free-for-all. If I wanted your land, hey, I should be able to take it. It's the new country, man. Let's
It's like the Kirk estate in Northwest Woods. Kirk,
yeah.
the guy that put the horse farm in there, and he just like, I'm just gonna put a horse farm here. But,
Well,
one other thing, and John mentioned this, and I think it's important, this Accabonac, the rebuilding of the marsh that the PEP and the TN Nature Conservancy sponsoring. At some points in time, they talk about taking
sediment,
and applying it.
non-beach compatible sediments, using it to elevate the marsh.
Yeah,
Where is that project right now? Are
So
there
the-
permits in place on that?
I don't
There's a
know.
couple people that are against using.
I know that,
That has never been proposed, as far as I.
There's a
What, to
couple
do that?
people with the project that seem to be against putting stuff on top. They want to
no,
build it
no,
up some
not
other way.
necessarily. They speak,
They're
it's
doing
an
it over in
option.
Connecticut.
Well, they've
But-
done it on Long Island too. They did
Yes.
it in,
Jamaica.
they did it up there, but they also did it over in, what's it called? That preserve where Seatuck is. They did some marsh work in there. I forget what it's called.
How did it work out?
It worked fine. They did a bunch of stuff with the county. Kim was involved in that when she was with the county. And Tom Iwaneko was too. But they did some of that, putting the sediment onto the marsh. I think it was more like a pilot kind of a thing. And, that's always been, well, that may be something that can be applied in certain cases. But for the projects that have been proposed, that has not been
No.
proposed.
Very little has been proposed yet, but if this data could help them, with that's another purpose for these data that we have on the sediments around there. So, it's all this stuff is important, and we have it right here. So we just have to figure out how to use it. Another thing from that committee, they were just wondering, when we approve like oyster reefs, is anything that we're approving going to interfere with the way the measurements they'd already taken? And it's not. John and I talked about the permits that the oyster reefs that are approved, and they're not near there. So
Yeah, I think whatever concerns there were about oyster reefs, they had giant oyster reefs in mind, not the oyster reefs we've been approving.
The first time I heard oyster reef, I was thinking more like Great Barrier myself.
right. That's right. That's what they.
I thought this was massive. I thought they were gonna be friggin' dumping old cars and shit like that.
Sinking ships in Acapulco.
Barley has these pictures of the oyster reefs before we all messed up the water around here, and they're huge, right? These huge oyster reefs. So anyway, that I think that's good that they haven't started the project yet very much. They're still figuring out where to do it. They're going to do it on their land. They're not going to look for other lands at this time.
Are they still talking, because I was sat in on some of those things, are they still talking about basically going out there with a shovel and scratching out some channels to drain off the pans? Is that what we're still talking about?
Yeah.
That's 4 years. It's 4 friggin' years. We've been talking about something that you could have gotten the Boy Scouts out there to do on a friggin' public service project.
Yeah, but it's the Nature Conservancy is the lead. They're applying for grants.
It's their property.
They have experts that they're bringing in to, work on the grant and the proposals and everything. So it's not, hey, let's get the Boy Scouts in here. It's
To a degree, it sounds like intellectual masturbation. I just, the trouble with stuff like that is it becomes circular. You never get to a point, because the one expert brings in another expert, which brings in, and by the time you're done, you're not even thinking about what you originally started. And
well, I don't know if I'd agree with that. I mean, I agree it's taking an inordinate amount of time, but I don't think there's changes. I think it's just developed slowly. And I think part of it is the grant process, the proposal process, the permitting process, all that stuff. And because all this stuff is kind of new to this marsh anyway.
So let's go back to the dredging issue, which is where this conversation started. Would anyone be opposed to giving that data to Drew Bennett to look at?
No. Sounds good. Sounds like a great next step.
They always come to us
just give them to them. I think that deserves like a sit down.
Yeah, no,
Discuss what you want to get out of this.
Right.
I think Kim should be involved in this too.
it's fine. But we should
Because
make some decision before. We
I don't know
leave here
what
tonight.
Kim's background is with Acabonic, but I've spoken to Kim about Northwest, and we've talked about in the past about wanting to possibly dredge down into the creek.
Right.
And use the county's dredge to do that when they're dredging the inlet. And many of the same, issues apply there. And we've got some data that's being generated now. But I didn't know this. When I talked to Kim about it, she had a whole plan that was presented to the county, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like
And it just languished.
Right.
And I can't help but believe that a lot of this has to do with lack of county funding. They're always broke. They're not looking to spend more money on this.
Well, I think certainly in the Northwest situation, I think it was always our understanding when we had discussed it that would be something that we would consider paying for.
Yeah.
We wouldn't expect the county to pay for it. We just want them to to do the work and we'd pay for it if we can afford it. I don't know what.
But see, the county subcontracts all that work. They have a subcontractor coming to Napeag.
Yeah.
Why would we go through the county to do it? Why wouldn't we just
Well,
hire
no,
a
you know what
contractor on our own?
yeah, but Francis, you know what the advantage is there? If they already have, let's say, a county contract, the guy's got a county contract
Mhm.
to do the initial inlet, like was done a year ago.
Mhm.
Well, okay, how many cubic yards of material, if you can get the permit modification to extend the dredging, how much more is it gonna be to dredge this so that it's a shared cost thing? We can turn around and say, hey, we'll pick up the tab, but I wouldn't be such a big duck. I would let the county pick up what they've picked up in the past and augment it with the
But why couldn't something
additional
like
funds.
something like that be done on a separate permit?
Well, it could be, but now it's almost like you're talking about double work. Now you have to apply for your own permit. It has to dovetail with their permits and.
But the county's
where they're
doing,
putting their dredge
the county is
spoil.
dredging their own bottomland. To go back into the creek is our bottomland.
Well,
So,
they're also
But they're
dredging
dredging-
state bottomland.
But they're dredging
They're dredging out into the
dredging
bay, which is not
Napeag,
their
too.
property.
right, but what I'm saying is, I don't think it's far-fetched to have our own permit to do the other area.
Yeah.
And then that way, we could address it whenever we choose.
I don't know if it's that easy to just go find a
It might be
dredge
easier-
company
might-
to work for you and yeah, we want that, 1,000 feet.
Well,
here,
that's
like
where
4 feet
adding on
wide.
to something, because one of the biggest costs of doing dredging isn't the dredging.
It's the mobilizing.
It's the mobilization,
Right.
it's the breaking down and getting out of there.
Mhm.
So the reason, Francis, I would argue against this separate permit is it's going to make it more difficult to integrate with what the county's already got. If we can have a sit down with the county where we come to a meeting of minds where they understand that we're not going in and we're not asking for freebies here. We're prepared to pay, okay? And the one thing that we do have going in our favor right now is the present county executive has a far different understanding and attitude towards dredging than the previous. Previous guy did not even want to get near the water, okay? So the interest in dredging projects was marginal at best. Ed Romaine comes from that mentality. He was always very into dredging. So listen, let's try and capitalize on that.
I think that's
I think
true.
we've got a good opportunity here. We've got our county legislator has shown real interest in this, and I think we should try and exploit it as best we can. And if that meeting that we're trying to get together for Napeag Harbor could be perhaps maybe more in general, broad strokes of Accabonac, of
Well, that's where I was going
Yeah.
before.
I know when I shot you down, I apologize.
Well, no, whatever, that's where it's going with, wrap all these issues into, an ongoing set of meetings between trustees, town, county legislator.
And on some of these
Whatever,
projects, if the
county
starts to look at it as us as partners, as part of the underwriting the projects, well, I would think
Okay.
they would be more interested in that.
Well,
The only thing I would be cautious about in Accabonac, picking up the tab to go to the launching ramp, because, in a way that, there's justification for.
It's navigation, they
County.
should be doing that.
yeah.
Okay, well, listen, there maybe there's the ability to do some trading.
Well, again, it's going to require a permit modification.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to focus on.
We've got to start this communication with the county and with the DEC.
I think we just need to have a strategy that we agree on, and And I think I heard it here tonight, it's those three embayments and kind of wrap them all together. The guy who's the dredge operator from the county, do you know him?
The dredge operator?
Yeah.
And no, as I said, they're using a contractor. I'm not even sure who the contractor
They
is.
always,
Well, they do have their own dredge.
I know they
And this
do,
one
but-
here, this one.
Yeah, because when he came here the last time, he said he would be interested in, in going down to the launch ramp. He was like, oh, yeah, it was just a casual conversation, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same guy in role now.
And the operator that you spoke to an operator when they were working in Accabonac?
Yeah.
When they were working on cutting the tip off of
No.
that last point? or
No, when they did the big dredge, when they had
Yeah.
the big dredge. That was a number of years ago.
they wind up with all, the contracts are given in such a way that they go right to the foot, so basically if you're gonna change anything, you gotta change it before the contracts are drawn up. And that's where you have to go to dredge screening committee, and then you have to get with, the funding, and, if you get the dredge screening committee to agree that they would do it, then you have to go to the DEC to get the permits modified to make it allowable, and in the process, you'd be working out the financial arrangements, but, and each one's gonna be a different thing. The Nepean thing is, gonna be a fairly huge project. It's probably gonna involve state land. And, so it's, the Accabonac thing is sort of fairly simple, is that we want to put another 500 feet of dredging on the thing. And you want to do it without paying for mobilization or anything else. And I think the original permit goes up, or the original permits used to go to the launching ramp. They wouldn't let you dredge unless you could show a public benefit for it. And the public benefit had to be access to the water. So, I think publicity-wise, you can make a point that what they're doing is really kind of dumb by not going the other couple hundred feet. And the one in Northwest Creek, there's a county mooring area
Doesn't
there.
work for me.
Right.
And so there's a county launching ramp there. So they use that to go out, and that thing we wanted them to go further up, but that's when they brought the 10th category of why you can dredge for environmental benefits. But after they created that, they've never used it. So the point we can make in Accabonac is that it's a public benefit for navigation, that they should continue to the thing. And in the P, it's going to be a big project. But again, it's for public benefit for the health of the pond, and it's also for navigation.
So we could make a small outline of the three embayments and what the benefit would be, and, put this in writing, like where does the dredging start, where does it end, the public benefit, and then who would pay for it, like if we were willing to pay for something. I think that's important.
Well, I think the continuing dialogue is the most important thing, because in my time on the trustees, it seems to me that we've been more or less, surprised might not be the right word, but for lack of a better word, we've been more or less surprised when the dredging has taken place. I know last year with Northwest, that was
That was a quick.
it's being done today, check it out.
What the county does is it tries to maintain all its permits for all of its projects, which is what we'll be doing. We're going to be trying to renew the permits for dredging in Georgia. You got to keep the permits in line, or you wind up like having to reapply for everything.
Well, I think it's the relationship too. We need to make sure we have a relationship with them and that they know who we are. And because right now, I think the face of Reggie, the interface is Kim.
There does come a time in all of these projects where they ask us for permission to use our lands. You know, it might be a point of negotiation.
Yep.
Well, I think it probably goes all the way back to the previous board where they tried to go around the DEC by having the town get the permits for them. So
Institutional memory.
right, that's what they always did, and
Yeah, I think
they just haven't been drawn out of that
unified
yet.
front is kind of important, from the town.
Yeah.
And if we have the support of the county politicians, I think they'll, without pushing it, without being threatening, I think they'll take us more seriously.
I think the three projects all have slightly different reasons for us wanting to do them. Northwest Creek is an environmental project. Accabonac Harbor should be looked at as to make navigation more open to
Access.
the public.
Safer.
And the Peak is for the benefit of the harbor. It also makes more sense to have the channel where it was.
All right, so we'll talk tomorrow about
Okay.
moving forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Lazy Point Neck Pig.
I think we already talked about it.
No, this is the leaseholder.
Oh,
Yeah, I see that.
Request from Daniel Newworth, leaseholder of 216 Shore Road, Lot 21 North, to sublet his lease to Evelyn O'Doherty, a resident of town of East Hampton, for 6 months.
Chris, did you look over that? Everything's in order there? Okay. I make a motion, we approve it.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
She
Okay.
wants to rent for 6 months, or she's been a
Oh,
resident?
yeah, I
6
wrote
months.
that very confusing. The lease is 6 months. She's a long-term resident of the town with voter registration and everything.
And just to be clear, the language in the lease, when we drew it up 6 years ago, 5 years ago, was basically that you guys have the authority to decide whether or not you're going to allow certain term leases, whether it's short-term, long-term. So each one's kind of a case-by-case basis for the trustees to decide on. This one, 6 months, has never been a problem historically for the trustees.
All right, we already discussed the next one, so we're on to administrative payment of the bills. Nothing,
No bills, that's good.
yeah. Minutes of the meeting of November 15th, 2024 available for review. Anybody happen to have a chance to look at them?
They're fine.
You want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of November 15th.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody have anything else they want to discuss? No? I'm going to ask you guys to stick around for a few minutes, if you don't mind. Do you have a motion to close?
Motion to close.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.